Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining this InfoReady Peer Spotlight webinar with Dr. Charlotte Forstall, who is with Washington University in St. Louis.
Wow.
We're so thankful that you're spending your time today. It might be your lunch hour if you're on the West Coast or in the Mountain Time Zone, or you might be getting through your mid-afternoon doldrums with us right now. And then in either case, thanks so much for being here. Before we get started, I'll go over the logistics and the schedule for today. So the webinar is scheduled for 60 minutes. We'll do about 30-minute discussion with our panelists, and then we'll do about 30 minutes with an audience Q&A. So if you want to ask your questions, please use the Q&A tool that's part of Zoom rather than putting it in the chat. Your phones are muted, so you won't be able to submit them that way either. The webinar is being recorded. We'll be sending that to you tomorrow in an email. And then by pigeon, we'll be sending it by carrier pigeon. There's also a survey that is going to load after the webinar. And there will be a poll question, another poll question right before the webinar as well. Before I introduce Charlotte Forstall, I'm going to give you a little overview of InfoReady here. So InfoReady is a centralized platform for helping higher ed institutions select in their selection and approval processes. For those of you who know it, you're able to collect applications or proposals and then route them through review workflow and approval workflow and communicate out the decisions to the people who submitted those applications. And you can also collect follow-up forms in the form of progress reports and pull all the reporting out of the system as well. The basics of the system: collecting forms, routing it through a review to approval process, and making decisions. You're doing that in a variety of different ways in higher ed. Right now, today we're going to be focusing on research, but those processes of collecting a form and getting feedback and making decisions, you're doing that in the provost's office, in the College of Engineering, in the College of Science and Arts, in the grad school, for a variety of things. Though many of those are listed on the screen here. If you have questions about how you could use InfoReady for any of those, let us know. We'd be happy to have the conversation with you. InfoReady also supports sharing templates with admins, so you could really get started quickly on using it for other uses at your institution. Now, we're here. We got through the intro of InfoReady and the webinar. So on today's webinar, we have Charlotte Forstall, who is with Washington University in St. Louis. She's a program manager there in the Research Development Office. So the webinar today, we're focusing on Charlotte and WashU's experience adopting the form designer in some of their research processes. So a little bit about Charlotte. Dr. Charlotte Forstall, I had to get the doctor in there for you, has steered the development of internal award programs, including the design of foundational processes at 3 R1 institutions since receiving her PhD in 2019. Her management of internal award programs balances rigor and structure with innovation, creativity to bolster the transformative growth of faculty research and impact. In addition to internal awards, she has several years of experience leading research development services to enable compelling faculty submissions to private foundations and federal agencies with a high rate of funding success. Currently at Washington University in St. Louis, Charlotte manages the Here and Next Research Seed Grant Program, a pillar of the university's new strategic plan. Designed to foster interdisciplinary collaboration and grow research capacity, the SEED grant program was launched in the fall of 2023 and comprises 4 separate tracks to radically expand faculty research across 7 schools. In the first year of programming, Charlotte has issued 40 interdisciplinary SEED grants to over 100 faculty, totaling $2 million. As year 2 begins, Charlotte will use InfoReady to collect progress reports to assess the program's effectiveness, launch and oversee the second year of applications and reviews, and will be instrumental in expanding WashU's use of InfoReady in ways that build capacity beyond the central office and throughout the institution. So, welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here today.
That was a great overview.
Thank you. I had a friend help me write it.
You're doing good work. You're doing good work. So thanks for joining us today to discuss your experience with the new form designer template in InfoReady. So first, we'll start with the basics about your institution. We kind of went over some of the work you're doing, but let's set the stage a little bit for the audience. Give us an overview of research and research development at WashU, and I'll stop sharing so they can see our pretty faces on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work in the central office. So research development office is centralized at WashU, meaning that our services are available to faculty from all schools, even though individual schools have their own research development professionals that can do many similar things to what we do. Which is to generally just help support the research development process and submit grants. So in launching the Here and Next seed funds, the decision was made to house those in the research development office because part of the tie between the seed grants and, the point that they would the thing that they'd like to foster is for them to get more external research dollars. That thing that they're very interested in doing. So that's part of the research excellence mandate there is to get those external funding dollars. So it makes sense for us to kind of help shepherd those awards through development from seed grants into actually launching their external proposal submissions. So our office is ultimately, I think as many central offices of research development are fairly new. It's about 5 years old now and growing and expanding widely. With the Here and Next strategic initiative, it's growing even more. So we've already added 2 people in the last year to our team for the Here and Next initiatives, and it's probably going to be a little bit more in the next coming years. So it's a moment that's exciting with a lot of change and a lot of moving parts.
I bet. I mean, you mentioned that this is part of the new strategic plan. So lots of eyes on the program as well.
Lots of eyes, lots of people's, this is something that is important to all of the schools. Like as with many, I think many research institutions, there's a lot of desire to kind of de-silo and to have lots of innovative interdisciplinary collaboration between various schools. And that's another one of the objectives here. And as an administrator, it can be difficult to kind of see those processes through, when you've got different units doing things in different ways. So not only do you have that top level interest from deans, you've also got the micro of trying to get everything, just done in terms of functionality. So yeah, a lot of eyes, everybody's very excited. Some people are a little, skeptical sometimes of big change too. So it's all of the things. And one of my goals throughout this, is obviously to only do what I can control. And to that is to put together as transparent and fair process as possible with as much information as widely available as possible, for the programs that I myself am running. So InfoReady has a big role in helping me do that.
And And so the program is new, right?
Mhm.
Since 2023. And Form Designer got launched in 2023 as well. So did you use Form Designer for year one?
So the answer to that is yes and no. I think that the launch of our programs was a little bit ahead of the official launch of all of the Form Designer. So we had two programs that were in the old format and two that were in the new format.
Oh, so you were
It was
actually able to see the differences at once.
at once. So like, yeah. So, and it's kind of been funny to see as it unrolled even further because now we have like Form Designer capabilities in the reporting. So like in the annual reports that you can do afterwards that wasn't there for those, I think any of the programs that we did last year, I think, I'm not sure. I think a couple of them are. So yeah, like it was live, we were working together through that. And it was actually kind of cool through the process to be like, hey, it would be really cool if this could happen. And y'all were like, just wait, here it comes. Here you go. Here's a great thing for you to have. So an additional complication, at least for WashU, is that I started after like the programs had already been launched. So the first couple of ones had already started. Someone else built them, someone else did them, and then when I took, and they didn't know InfoReady. I knew InfoReady when I started, so I was like able to kind of be like, oh, you did this, let me fix it, and let me do it a little bit differently for the next time, because I have that knowledge. So yeah,
Yeah,
hiring didn't kind of go at the same speed that they wanted the programs to look at.
I get it. And let's drill that into that a little bit. You've used InfoReady at previous stops as well for not necessarily large internal grant programs, but in other things as well. Um, Tell us a little bit of how you've seen the platform evolve and your use evolve.
Absolutely. So I've been aware about InfoReady since 2019, 2020. So since graduating with my PhD, I've worked in mostly research administrative professional areas, running some kind of internal competition at some level or another. At my first institution, InfoReady was adopted by the whole institution, but individual units had to decide whether or not they wanted to sign on and thus give a financial percentage to that cost. The unit that I was a part of at that time decided not to. And so I had to kind of crib together something that worked for our research awards in a way that worked. It made me really familiar with a lot of things that could kind of work as a one-stop shop in the way that, InfoReady is. Like I still had to do a ton of compiling behind the scenes to do review. And it really kind of made me go, maybe we really should have done that, but I wasn't the decision maker in that. So, you do what you do.
You're fresh out of getting your PhD. You're not.
I was so fresh. Like they were like, Charlotte, you'll figure it out. It'll be fine. You can do something else. And like, I mean, I tried lots of things. I tried things from like trying to hack a Google form, to make it kind of more of a submission. I tried things that our institution had built into their website, which was a nightmare. Don't recommend doing that. And then I think the one that we settled on, which was kind of using Qualtrics to do the like proposal thing, but there were a lot of downsides to that too, particularly when it came time to review. So it was still me collating and doing all of the things that, InfoReady does for you and shepherding that process through. So when I went to my next institution, a couple of years later, they were in full use of InfoReady already for limited submissions for the institution. It was another centralized research development office, not too dissimilar from WashU's. And they they had been using InfoReady for, I think, at least a year at that point for limited submission opportunities. So it was connected to grant making, but it wasn't internal awards. So they already had some knowledge of that. So a couple months after I started there, they moved that institution's internal awards to our office, and I was charged with running those. So then I got my crash course in InfoReady as a user. And so I was finally able to use some of those tools available through InfoReady that I hadn't been able to do before. And at that time, it was still on the old system. And I'll admit, I kind of grumbled a little bit. Like I found it hard to edit things. You know, after you kind of put things out there, it was kind of hard to see what your questions were. I loved that we could have templates that could be repeatable. But it was kind of hard to edit them cohesively, and there wasn't really that kind of logic that you could get on things from Qualtrics, for instance, that were really helpful and kind of what was becoming the industry standard. So like a year or so into that, all of a sudden the form designer came up, and it was like all of my prayers had been answered, that like, you know, okay, we're going to have this now. You can move questions around with ease. You can have logic where it depends on the answer that they choose, the next questions that get asked, which lets us put together, I think, just much more comprehensive proposals for faculty to answer that are responsive to their needs. In addition, like the things like, you know, the co-applicants, like having that kind of load in a way that is really, really suave is very nice. To have that built in without having to like build individual questions for each person that they need to add. So at that point, I was kind of moving things over to an administrator to kind of do more the top level. So I was less in InfoReady, but I was just so happy to see that, you know, it was becoming something that was an even more robust tool than it already was. So when I came to WashU, it was exciting to kind of step in and be like, oh, we can really do some things now. And so at that point, I had already been aware of a lot of the changes that had been made. And I know that the people who had put together the original applications for our first cycle for a couple of, because we have several programs, so it was only for like one or two, you know, they were doing the best that they could really quickly because it wasn't their job. So they were doing their job and this. So like when I took over, I was like, y'all, we can really do some amazing things with this. And it's this year, I'm really looking forward to it. I just launched all of our fiscal year 25 programs, and I was able to get everything kind of updated using the new form designer. And I think it's chef's kiss organization, and it all, in my mind, falls back to that goal that I have, which is like, I want my processes to be as fair and transparent and as easy and as straightforward as possible. And having something that is easy to use both for me as the administrator and easy to use as an applicant has been really important to the process.
That's all wonderful. Thanks for taking us on that journey. You experienced the before and after
Did
variety of ways.
Yeah. And you know, it's having to do all of and like the awards that I was kind of doing by my own invention were much smaller. So like it wasn't as nearly as like, oh gosh, yeah, I've got $2 million of awards that I'm giving out, right? It was much smaller dollars, but still it was a lot of work that wasn't necessarily efficient, right? To have to kind of do all of that on the back end.
Well, I don't want to linger on this too much, but what, when you weren't using InfoReady, what part was most time consuming? Like cobbling together the application packets, wrangling reviewers, what's
I would say like everything that had anything to do with review, because I have been an academic. I know how they're busy. They have a lot to do. Things need to be delivered to them in a very straightforward way. And there was no real great way for me to give them everything they needed at their fingertips to do review in the way that InfoReady does. So like I was spending a lot of time like individually like putting together review packages for reviewers. So like if I had the same reviewers reviewing the same 3 proposals, that was pretty easy. But if there were any variance on that, I had to individually do it for each single reviewer in order for them to have everything that they needed. With InfoReady, I don't have to worry about that. Like InfoReady takes care of that for me, and I can do it once and spend a lot of time doing that well, and then it will give the information needed to each of the individual reviewers. So a huge amount of time. And it's helpful that InfoReady also sends the reminder email saying, hey, haven't done your review yet, and it's due. Because I would also have to do that too. And I mean, I still have to do that now, but that's not an InfoReady problem.
Tap on the shoulder.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know, it's not you bugging them. It's the system.
Right.
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 You
And
blame.
I have to say, I have to do far fewer reminders using InfoReady than I would have otherwise. So there's usually only 1 or 2 people that miss it. So
Okay. I'm not going to profile who the people are that miss it. So well,
they're all very, very busy people. So I'm very grateful for their time regardless. So I understand. I like having reminders myself. So no shade.
So going back to the Here and Next Research Seed Grant Program, you had some running on the form designer, some running on the legacy template. We're going to get in the weeds here. What specific features and functionality did you enable in the form designer that you felt were most beneficial?
Honestly, a lot of the demographic information, the way that gets input now, like I think I mentioned the co-applicants piece, like it is so much simpler for people who are filling out the application to be able to do it in the new form designer than it was in the legacy template. Because it just automatically will like populate, you got someone else, go ahead, put that in too. And that makes things a lot clearer. And the same, the whole question of like logic questions comes into play too. So we have several tracks. They each have their own InfoReady competitions, but we also have within our program different we call them pillars. So pillars of research excellence that the grants should be associated with. So to sum up, I can go through the whole rigmarole, but like environmental research is one, public health is another, global research is one, digital transformation. So like these are areas that we're also interested in supporting. So in selecting what their research excellence priority area is, I can develop the questions even further based on that selection, which is hugely helpful to both myself and I think to the applicants. And it permits us to kind of track the kind of interest we're having for different programs in those areas that I don't know would have been as easy or as straightforward with the legacy template.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, because you pick one track, you get presented with the specific set of questions related to that track.
Right. And I like that we have page views now. So like I can do all of the demographic questions, all of the proposal specific questions, and then all of the uploads. Like it lets everything be very concise, and like, I feel like it matches more of what their expectations are as applicants, based on other systems that they're using from foundation funders or, other, I mean, it's not grants.gov, thank God, but like, that kind of thing. I don't want it to be grants.gov, but other things like that, right? It kind of matches what they are expecting from an application portal.
So this is this is this next question way in the weeds, and I'm touching on the conditional logic questions.
Mhm.
Did you choose to present the conditional questions in a separate section, a separate page, or just on screen without the additional separate package, basically?
It depends on the program. So for the most part, I put I try not to have too many of my competitions using too much of the logic. Like ideally, everybody should be submitting a very similar application, but depending on which of the pillars is trying to track which information, I'm gonna have different questions. So typically, I have that mostly with the demographic information. So on that first page, to get, not get it out of the way, but to kind of let everything else kind of be standard across the applications. But that I think is a personal preference for me that might not be a problem for anyone else, I guess. So
Yeah, I've heard people choose to use a section and you add questions in and that'll pop up. And I've heard other people have a preference where, okay, we'll just, these additional questions that are related to this track, we'll just throw it on a new page and if there's 3 tracks, we'll just have 3 pages and the pages will be conditional. So it kind of just is dependent on the
and
approach.
truthfully, I feel like the place that it's going to be the most helpful for me is going to be on the reporting side of things, where I might have questions about, has your grant work, caused you to, collaborate with more individuals external from the university? Yes or no? So in that I can, populate the questions on the reporting side of things based on what's actually happening, so they don't get overwhelmed with questions that aren't a part of their, project design. So I think that for me, the form designer on the reporting is going to be even more valuable. Like, I mean, it's valuable in the application process, but it's going to be mind-blowing, I think, in the reporting. So like I said, we're just getting ready to start. I think our first award reaches its first year, end of year, in the end of September. So I'm really excited to see how how it changes the way that reporting goes, because I'm gonna have to do the same, send out the report, get people's feedback. The conditional logic is, I think, going to be really a game changer there, into letting it be as easy a process as possible based on what people's individual projects are.
Yeah. Those progress reports, very key in being able to close the loop, see what the outcomes are of all of this investment.
Considering like what you mentioned previously with, it's part of the strategic plan, the university is putting a lot of resources into this, not only the $2 million that they've done for project support, but my salary, my colleague's salary, not to mention many others that are all to try and make this project or this program successful. So being able to have that data relatively easily acquired and packageable is going to be great.
Can I tell you a bit of good news related to progress reports in form
Yes.
design?
Yeah.
Tomorrow we have a release, and there's a new feature for progress reports being included where you can assign delegates to a progress report. So the co-PIs, the co-applicants, whomever, you can assign them, have them help fill it out. That's happening tomorrow. So So, if you're using Form Designer, you can take advantage of it. But if you're not using Form Designer, if you're using like the funding template, it won't be there.
I will 1000% be utilizing that because I've already gotten questions from people whose projects are over a year out. Like, how am I going to fill this out? My PI doesn't do that. And I'm like, we'll figure it out. Right now, your PI is responsible, but now I get to tell them. And this is the kind of thing I was talking about earlier. Like, I would be like, it would be really great if we could do this, but like InfoReady has consistently over my time using it been responsive to those kinds of needs. And it's often been the case where I've been like, it would be really great if we could do this. And then you'll pop in and give me this great, well, here you go. It's launching tomorrow. Like, this is not the first time that that's happened. So amazing.
And you didn't know this when we prepped a few weeks ago. This is a live reaction from Charlotte right now.
I think our program, or whoever our account manager had said that like I think this is in the works, but I don't know when it's going to be available to not get my hopes up maybe. So this is exciting stuff. Because I tell you, the reporting is going to be just as much work as the applications. So anything to make that process easier is going to be great.
Well, and it's so helpful to have standardized forms for that.
And especially like standardized in general is just a good word, one that we're like really excited about here at WashU because, it's an institutional priority here for people who are using seed funds to kind of follow a similar procedure. And that's, I know, something that's in the works to happen over the next year is for people to adopt it more broadly at WashU. I think we got all of the budget approvals we need to do for that. And I'm not really sure exactly what all that's going to entail, but the idea is for it to be a pretty standardized process across programs, is that we're all using similar objectives, similar goals, so that there's good baseline for what people can expect from awards and applications and reports. So
since you're such a power user, are they going to say, Charlotte, please develop the seed grant template for the institution?
I think probably. Like, I think I have some meetings on my calendar that are going to be like, all right, so what are we going to do next? So that's still in the works. We're kind of in that wonderful dead space of August where like nobody's really around. So we'll see what happens. But I know for a fact that my office will start using this as a part of our limited selections process. We call it internal selections. So that is coming. And right now our program manager who is in charge of limited selections uses a very complex system that's combined like with SharePoint and her own Excel documents and emails and our website and everything that there's so many steps to her procedure that she will be able to get so much time back and do other parts of her job because she'll be able to kind of have a unified template that she can pretty much just copy and paste without having to go through all of the very many steps that she has to do presently for internal selections.
Well, so that you can do the actual research development, proposal development, work with faculty members and
right. And like actually help with the like she's doing what I was doing before, where like coordinating the review offline, so to speak. She'll be able to do that all on InfoReady. And that's part of the standardization that I think will be really, really useful. I think you'll get more people agreeing because they know that it's an easy system to work with and that it's user friendly, and just across the board, it will make her life a lot easier. Because right now I kind of serve as her backup and she was showing me the whole process and I was like, your life is going to change.
Don't take me back. Don't take me back to the
right. Like I was like, your life is going to be amazing. So she's really excited and can't wait to start doing that. So
I have some questions about that, but I just want to say one other thing. We did a peer spotlight webinar a couple of years ago, and someone, VPR from Oklahoma State was on it, talking about high-profile undergraduate research scholarship that they do, that's funded by an wealthy alumnus. They switched to using InfoReady. They cut 3 weeks off the review process.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
It's a
Yeah.
game changer for sure. So
Because,
she'll be happy.
I mean, the thing that takes me the longest time now in doing review is deciding who will review what proposals. Before, it used to be like, I would decide who was reviewing what proposals and then, developing those collated packages that I was telling you about. And inevitably, something messes up that beautiful plan and I have to adjust. And it's much easier to adjust in InfoReady. So like, I believe that it takes a lot of time off of people's plates to achieve review a lot faster.
Yeah.
Just so much easier.
Especially when you think about, you're managing the here and now research seed grant. That's your main focus, but that's not the only thing, right? This gets multiplied.
Yeah.
And then you're drowning if you're doing everything manually.
Right. And like, there's a lot that goes into managing awards post-award beyond just like getting the progress reports. So, the fact that we can have a tool that makes it straightforward is incredibly helpful, because I'm not having to, rely on, making sure that my brain did it right the first time, right? Like I've got a system that is standardized and is useful.
So another potential time saver, I don't know if you're doing this, with conditional logic and all the new form designer features, are you asking any questions that help you determine eligibility or help them determine their eligibility in the form?
I'm not presently right now, because our awards are pretty widely eligible. I could see that being really useful. I think one reason why I haven't done that is so like all of our awards pretty much require that there be collaboration. So there's not just one single PI. So there needs to be co-collaboration with other PIs. So it's kind of more on me to double check that they're eligible, because that eligibility is going to be, have you finished your reporting for any other awards that you have with us?
Oh, so it's the behind the scenes things you got to double check.
Right. And like, given that there might be someone who is a co-PI on however many awards, probably not going to know off the top of their head, especially if they're not the person who's responsible for submitting that award. Even though I say any award on which you need to be a co-PI, your awards need to be done, but that will be me checking. Otherwise, no, I could see that being really useful kind of later on down the line. I'm trying to think if there's like but I can see why that would be a really good thing to have. Like if for some reason we started getting a lot of people, for instance, my awards are only for full-time WashU faculty, right? If I started getting graduate student awards or that kind of thing, I could see maybe something like that being necessary, but we haven't had that happen so much.
Always a lot of internal conversations to determine these things. Okay, so we've had a lot of good back and forth here. I'm going to open it up for questions now. We've got several in the Q&A queue. So I'm just going to get into it. First question. What was the most surprising feature and unforeseen benefit of switching your process to InfoReady? I think you covered it a little more, but there's more to this question. I use a SharePoint spreadsheet in Microsoft Forms to manage admission and enrollment processes in my research program, and I am hesitant to seek out alternatives because this process works so well, but I am open. Thank you.
I mean, I understand when you find a system that really works for you, it can be hard to shake it up. I have found the time that I've gotten back from only having one place to go to really be the winner here with that. Like everything is in one spot. I also, not to hate on SharePoint, but I find it a maddening system to use. That I wouldn't, and I actually haven't used Microsoft Forms because I kind of am a little bit of a Microsoft hater. So apologies there, Microsoft overlord. But I just have found it so user friendly to be able to have everything in just one spot. That isn't, that's so much easier replicable. So like the way that I've seen SharePoint work, and again, my system never was SharePoint, so I can't really speak too much to how that works. But the way I've seen like my colleague use it, it is a lot of work to put together one share for like one internal selection competition. It is much less work to put together one InfoReady page for one internal selections competition. And she can pretty much just like copy and paste it and change, like, and have a template basically for an internal selection that she can then just add very minor changes to based on the individual call and just have it bam be done. And have that be its form too. Like it's both the SharePoint and the form all together in one. So I think that would be a huge time saver. But I'm constantly the kind of person to be looking for, can I do this better? Can this be more, like, I love setting up processes. So I'm kind of a constant refiner. And that's, I think, another reason that I really like InfoReady, because as you witnessed on this call, like they are constantly refining the process too, in ways that benefit me in the way that I'd like to run my program. So I think that, and I don't know that that's happening with SharePoint or Forms. And I'm trying to think of a good example, but I feel like there are times when I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about doing it that way. And that's so much easier. Like I've had a lot of good success in this past year working with Ashley, who was our account manager, to come up with solutions to problems that or situations really. Like I'm like, I'd really like to tackle this in a certain way. Any clues on how I can do that? So I like that approach, I guess.
Yeah. And
Constant.
I'll add to that. There are some institutions that have been using InfoReady for 10 years. So you use InfoReady, if you don't use InfoReady, over time, your process may get stale. And it's good to revisit it, regardless of what you're using, to identify how you can improve it, refine it, get rid of something that you no longer need to do. So that's just general a suggestion for everyone on the call. Especially if you inherited a project that's been a process that's been around for 15 years.
Yeah. Because I can't imagine your process needing to be the same for that long a period of time. Be working at cross purposes to giving yourself more work to do than necessary.
Right. Okay. Another question. This is about co-applicants. You mentioned co-applicants. So what are the advantages to using the co-applicants functionality compared to just having an open field for the primary applicant to dump all the needed contact info, and then also use the add contacts for notifications for automated reminders?
I often want more information than just open fields allow. For instance, that means that so if I'll do for part one and part two. So open field versus contacts. For open field, that means that I need to depend on whoever is filling out the application to actually give me the information that I've asked for. So I often want to know more than just their name and their email. I want to know what school they're in. I want to know what role they're gonna have. I have other questions besides just that. So, and I want their title and that kind of thing, which I believe you can do. You can do like repeatable sections and other things, but this puts it in a format that's more easily exportable, I
Yeah.
guess.
We actually have special functionality for reporting functionality for the co-applicant section.
Right. And then the contact email, there are other people that they sometimes want to add to that aren't co-applicants. So often research administrators. And I don't want research administrators put on as a co-applicant because that's not their role. So this allows me to ask all the questions that I want, ensure that I get an answer to them directly rather than having them just not fill it out. And then it has that ability to export in a way that is very helpful, that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Right. Yeah. Definitely helpful doing it that way.
Right. Especially because like our awards are fundamentally collaborative, like you have to have a collaborator. So having that built in is very useful.
Yeah. We have some questions about the review process, managing reviewers. Before we get to that, someone from WashU is in the comments and said they're excited about using InfoReady.
I'm sure we'll talk at some point. I'm sure
someone in undergraduate research. So
oh, cool. Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah,
I miss
so
students.
you'll be talking to someone internally at some point.
Yay, I love it.
Going back to reviewer management. First question here. Does InfoReady track how many times a reviewer was asked to review an application?
I don't know. And like asked to review generally as in terms of like how many times they reviewed per cycle or just all over like however many times they've been asked ever or however many times they've been reminded per proposal. I don't know.
I have an answer for both.
Okay.
You might be able to use this information in your daily life, in your daily work. So in the system, on the data grid, the reviews tab, you see the reviewers who have been assigned to a specific application. So you can filter it down to just those reviewers and you'll get a count there in that dashboard data grid. But also we have special reports. So within a competition, you could there's 2 reports related to reviewer management. One is just provides a summary of reviewer assignment counts. So you can see, oh, reviewer A have assigned them to 11, reviewer B to only 3. And then there's one that goes into more detail, and you can see which applications the review was assigned to and the status of their review. So within the competition, you can see that. And then on the reports tab across the navigation bar, there's a report you can download there for a reviewer summary across all competitions. So you can see, okay, globally, Professor ABC is our gold star faculty reviewer that's done 150 reviews this academic year.
I can see this being really super useful, at least between me and other reviewers, or not other reviewers, other administrators. For instance, my colleague in my office who does internal selections, sometimes we double dip, right? And so it will be really useful to be able to see like, are we super over relying on, Professor ABC? And are there people who are not taking advantage of their time and skills and resources? So yeah, that's really useful to know. That's very cool. Very cool.
We're breaking ground here. there's another review question.
Mhm.
Before I proceed, so the person who asked that question, I hope that helped. Let me know in the QA if it did or didn't. The next review question. Does InfoReady have a query to match a proposal to a reviewer? It doesn't have a specific query, but how do you do that, Charlotte? How do you match them?
So the way that I have done that, in all of my programs, it's kind of different based on which of the programs. I mentioned earlier, we have our buckets, so like our public health, global research, digital transformation, etc. I usually try and make sure that someone who can speak to that discipline area is there. So, and I almost always try and make sure that they are associate professor or above, so tenured, so that they are, kind of bred into doing these kinds of institutional tasks. But I do it kind of on a little bit more of a matchmaking ability. Like I'll try and do it very holistically. My idea is to make sure that they don't promise indisciplined read, and in fact, I state quite emphatically at the beginning that that is not something that we can offer. We're not the NIH, we're pulling from your peers so that, we're going to give you an expert level review, but it's going to be a generalized expert, right? But I do try and get someone who can speak to the discipline broadly writ as possible on the review, but try and balance it, right? Which is easier said than done when you have programs that are open to all disciplines across the entire university. So I try my best to make sure that there is a spread of, in discipline or as close to possible, and then generalized readers on each proposal so that it's not too weighted in any one direction for anybody. But yeah, now I'm hoping to develop more of a kind of committee that is read into what the program, because like that there's a bunch of, I feel like, reviewer education you have to do too, about like what is the goal of this program, what are you actually looking for. So I'm hoping to develop over this next year kind of a pool of reviewers who are dedicated to reviewing for these programs, who already kind of know the expectations of the programs, but aren't being over relied upon to review at every chance, So hopefully we'll see. That's a work in progress.
You never know what happens when you encounter other people.
Right. It'll be new every time you do it.
I had a joke that involved my plans and my kids. I'm gonna hold off. We've got more questions here. So are you sending the decisions through email or through the system?
I send it through the system. I usually, one of the things I really like about InfoReady is that you can adapt the notifications to your own needs, and you can do that at the competition level so that it is, the same across all notifications that you give out for that particular competition. So there's a lot of different templates that y'all provide for notifications beyond just award. But for awards and, rejections, I edit it at the template or competition level to be a little bit more personalized than what y'all provide, which is general, it's fine. But I usually change kind of wording and everything for each of those, because like I also am very happy with the way that I can just have the reviewer's words immediately sent in the rejection But I also want to make sure that it's not just given to them cold, right? Like that this isn't, it's like, sorry you didn't get it, here's some feedback. So I usually make some edits to the way that it appears. I'll make it a little bit more me in terms of the rejection, like, it really does suck that we can't give money to everybody. Please do try again. Please talk to me. Here are some suggestions from the reviewers. Please let me know if you have questions. I also usually will remove the score that they get. I don't send them the scores. I just send them the narrative feedback that they get from reviewers. Because the score ultimately has little to do with whether or not they got funded. It's just kind of a way that the reviewers think through the content is the more important thing. For awards, I also do send that through the system, but I kind of have a little bit more of a process for that because I also have terms and conditions that I need lots of signatures on. So I will often be like, all right, here is your award information. You will have an award letter and terms and conditions document that will be following in DocuSign. But I get to do it all in one fell swoop, so I can do everything that I need to do in InfoReady and send that out, and then worry about my DocuSign stuff later. And it's amazing. Yeah.
Helpful not to run around everywhere. Virtually anyway.
Right.
So we're getting close to the end here. One more question here.
Okay.
When applicants and reviewers do have questions, are they emailing you directly, emailing you through InfoReady? What are they doing?
Usually, so the way that InfoReady is set up, there are a couple of places, like at the head of each competition, they should have a person who's the contact person for each competition. So they can email to me. They're usually also in InfoReady is a little thing that says questions, contact us. And that email will go to someone else, that admin who isn't me, but is someone in arts and sciences. And they usually forward it to me. But I also try and put, my research seed funding email throughout the whole process and the call for proposals, et cetera, so that they can reach out to me via email. I don't get many messages through InfoReady at all. I don't think that that's really how it works. And I kind of like it that way because it goes to my email. And the same thing with when I send out those awards and rejections and reviews, requests for reviews, I can send it through. It sounds like it's coming from me via InfoReady. So I am an administrator, but I also have a research seed fund email that is also an administrator. So it will either come from me or that research seed fund email rather than just InfoReady generally. And I always like to CC whichever one it doesn't come from. So either me or the research, just so that I can have a backup. So I like that.
Got it. You got it. By the way, everyone, there's you can automatically CC an email address by checking a box in the system.
And I usually have that set up at the competition level that like everything goes to research seed funding, so that it's all there. It's amazing.
Well, it certainly makes your life easier. Everyone, we're near the top of the hour here. Before I say thank you to Charlotte, I do want to let everyone know we've been talking about Form Designer. We've been talking about the older templates in the system. There is a Form Designer migration tool in the system. If you try to copy a competition today, it's going to ask you whether you want to migrate it to Form Designer or just use the legacy template. I recommend migrating to Form Designer. so that you can take advantage of all the additional functionality in the system. If you don't know how to do that, reach out to our support team and we'll be happy to help, or contact your account manager as well. I am going to share some contact information on the screen here at the end. So you can reach out to us if you have any questions. And now I'll say thank you. Very big thank you to Dr. Charlotte Forstall from Washington University in St. Louis. Great conversation with you. I hope it's been helpful to everyone who joined us on the webinar. And this webinar is being recorded. We'll share it afterwards with everyone.
Thank you. It's been great.
Thank you. And have a great afternoon and hopefully early weekend for all of you. Bye.